Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our panel titled Magnifying Economic Opportunities for Growth Through Technology. With COVID, I hope everyone is staying safe, and this panel becomes very important as we start to look at our path forward as we come out of these very trying times. We have a great panel for you today. Just to go through and introduce them, the first panelist is Steven Zelstra. He's president and CEO of Arizona's Technology Council. Our second panelist is Tom Aker, director, NAU Institute of Sustainable Energy Solutions. And third, Benjamin Rudell, director, NAU School of Informatics, Computing, and Cybersecurity. As you can see from those three areas, those are some great growth areas as we go forth in 2021. And so we will challenge our panelists to provide some insights that might help us to fashion our path forward. Just to give you a quick introduction of each of the panelists, the first is Tom Aker. Tom is a professor of mechanical engineering at Northern Arizona University, where he's been since '96. He holds a PhD in mechanical engineering from Colorado State University. His duties include teaching and performing research related to energy systems, power system modeling, renewable energy, thermodynamics, and fluid mechanics. His research in energy relates to wind flow modeling from distributed wind applications, optimization of off-grid energy systems, wind turbine aerodynamics, and wind integration. Our second panelist, Ben Rudell, is currently a professor and the director of the School of Informatics, Computing, and Cyber Systems at Northern Arizona University. He's the president of Rudell Environmental Consulting, chief science officer for Critical Science, Inc., and the director of Fusion Projects. His PhD is in civil and environmental engineering from the University of Illinois. And then our third panelist, Steven Zelstra, serves as the president and CEO of Arizona Technology Council, a role he began in 2007. He's responsible for strategy, operations, finance, and policy development. Mr. Zelstra is a vocal spokesman for the value technology can provide in raising social and economic standards in Arizona, and was named Leader of the Year Technology by the Arizona Technology Times. So without wasting any time, I want to go right to Steven. How can state leaders support building Arizona's reputation as a tech hub?
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. I'm pleased to be here. Sorry, my video is not on. Of course, I run the Arizona Tech Council, and we weren't able to get it on live, but nonetheless, I'm here and look forward to our chat today. Well, first of all, reputations have to be earned, right? And, you can't grow a reputation through just promotion and marketing. It has to be a reality. So one of the things a lot of people may not know is that we have about 9,500, a little more than 9,500 tech companies in Arizona today. That's more than the state of Washington, right? A lot of folks think of Seattle and Washington as a whole as one of the major tech hubs. So we have a few more tech companies than they do. And these companies employ around 200,000 souls in Arizona. I think the leadership in Arizona has done a pretty good job over the last 5 to 10 years. If we look at whether it's entrepreneurial startups, whether it's expansion and growth of existing companies, or the attraction of new technology companies to Arizona, particularly in the last 5 years, they've all been at a breakneck pace. We are really growing the tech industry. Some of the attraction is a result of, not so great business climates and in other places, and people are jumping ship and moving their operations to places like Arizona, Texas, and Utah. The three things that are critical to the success of a tech hub are the workforce, the capital, and of course the technology / innovators, the folks who come up with new technology. And we do pretty well on both the workforce side and on the technology and innovator side. We're probably not one of the best when it comes to things like venture capital, but one of the things that the leadership of the state can do in 2021 is to reauthorize the angel investment tax credit. That's one of the things that we created in 2006. It's had a profound impact on the growth of the tech industry, and it's due to sunset in June of 2021. So that will be a discussion with our state's leadership during the next and upcoming legislative session. So one of the reasons that companies stay here and are growing, that we have such a robust startup environment, and that we're attracting so many companies is because we have a really good business climate. We've lowered corporate income taxes over the last 10 years. We have phenomenal universities that are producing the kind of talent that the tech industry needs. We have low taxes. We have a low cost of living, and we have a very high standard of life. So this is a place that, as we know, lots of people like to move to from other places. And we're benefiting from the fact that, especially places like California, all of the regulatory burden and tax burden are going in the other direction. And so we've become more competitive than we've ever been with other states. And the result is what I mentioned. We are becoming a major tech hub.
Excellent. So, Tom, Arizona is rich in land and renewable energies. Has Arizona reached its potential? And if so, what next? If not, what can we do to help it reach that potential?
All right, so this is an excellent question. So when we think about Arizona's potential with renewable energy, we're primarily thinking about wind and solar energy. Those are our two main resources. There is some geothermal energy in the state, and obviously we have some hydropower. Those resources are somewhat more limited. When we think of wind power, for example, it is pretty highly dependent upon where you're at in the state. The power in the wind, it scales pretty strongly with the wind speed, with the cube of the wind speed. So if you have a 20% increase in the wind speed, you double the power. 20% decrease, you half the power. So it depends pretty strongly on the wind resource. And when you think about the state in general, and you're wondering, well, how much wind power do we have? That's a question that we asked pretty vigorously, I would say about 20 years ago. And the reason we did is because that's about when wind energy prices were getting low. Solar wasn't low just yet. It took solar about another decade to catch up to where wind was, but it has certainly caught up. And with regard to the wind power, what we did is we took a pretty in-depth look at the wind around the state, based on data, based on wind modeling, in collaboration with and led by the National Renewable Energy Lab and other atmospheric institutes that specialize in wind prediction. And through that, we're able to come up with some pretty good estimates of what the wind speed is, and consequently the wind power output would be around the state. Now, when you get that raw wind resource, you have to filter out some places. For example, you're not going to build a big wind power plant in any city. You're not going to build it in the Grand Canyon or any national monument. You're not going to build it in wetlands. So kind of filter out all of those places that are just not suited to having a power plant steep slopes, etc. And what you end up with is a very large amount of wind power resource available in the state. So to give you an example, if we're using technology from about 5 or 6 years ago, wind turbine technology, so this is stuff that's in the ground, Arizona would have about a 240,000 megawatt potential of power plants with a 30% capacity factor or better, which is generally what it takes to start making money. If you up that to 40% capacity factor, it's around 48,000 megawatts. For reference, our peak load in the state, adding up all the utilities in the summer, is about 21,000 megawatts. So relative to the peak load, we actually have quite a lot of wind power resource available. Now, if you translate that over to the new technology, the technology that's coming on the market in the next couple of years, and I'll simply state that the technology has evolved in a way the last, say, 15 years, where the turbines are made to capture much lower wind speeds. It's called low wind speed technology. And the reason for that is because there's a lot more land area that's got a low wind speed. And Arizona is a state like that. We have a very large area of what's called a class 3 wind resource, so not terribly windy. In fact, that's part of the reason everybody likes to live here. It's a nice place to be. And so it's not terribly windy, but the new wind resource, low wind resource turbines, that potential goes up to about 500,000 megawatts of potential capacity, and at 40% capacity factor, about 200,000. So that's 10 times our peak load. The point is, there is a lot of resource available on the wind energy side. And that potential, however, is dwarfed by the solar resources. Everybody who lives in Arizona or even knows of Arizona knows this is a very sunny place. And there's an amazing amount of energy that hits our surface of the state every moment of every day, as long as the sun's up. And if you take a look at how much energy hits the state over the course of a year and how much we use on a daily basis, we use less than 1/100% of what's available in the radiation coming to the planet. And so, and that's just in Arizona. So there's an immense solar resource in Arizona, much bigger than the wind resource, which itself is quite substantial compared to the load we have in the state. So to answer the first question, have we, kind of exhausted our renewable energy potential? And the answer is we haven't even scratched the surface. Wow. We've got ample resource, and if you look at neighboring states, there's good resources there too. So what is it going to take to actually to access that? And I think one of the things we have to look at in that regard is a favorable policy environment that encourages development of those resources. And since I think my time is probably up here, I'll leave it there.
All right. Next, my next question is for a man after my own heart. Ben, cyber, informatics, crypto, they're among the hottest software areas globally, not just in this country. What do you see for the future, and how is SICC and NAU Arizona poised or positioned to take advantage of this in the future?
Thanks. We're poised very, very well. So when the tech business started rolling in San Francisco and Boston and Austin several decades ago, Arizona was a tiny state, and we weren't positioned to lead in that area. We have another chance right now with cybersecurity, with crypto, and in this emerging area, which is the fastest growing area of the global economy, and will remain. It has legs too. It's not just a blip. This is the growth sector of the world's growth sector, which is software and tech. The main primary growth area is in cybersecurity. At the same time, there's a giant leadership gap globally and in the United States. We are only graduating a fraction of the students that we need to staff jobs, and there isn't foreign talent in this area that we can hire to stopgap that, like we've been doing in software and in engineering for decades. So this is anyone's game right now. Arizona could be the global leader or one of 2 or 3 global leaders if we jump in with both feet at this juncture with investments in research and in education. That window will close over the next 5 years. There will be clusters and world leaders and national leaders that emerge over the next 5 years, but the door's still open. So to give you an idea of the voracious demand for talent and for training in this area, so I've been on the phone a lot lately with Jason Deno at the University of Arizona. He's running one of their cyber operations training program because we're at NAU right now launching several cybersecurity programs, and we've been comparing notes, and I've been trying to learn from him. They've built their program from 0 students to almost 1,000 in less than 3 years. That's like an entire college appearing overnight, and it's growing exponentially. So this is really the growth opportunity in tech for the state universities as well. I believe, just by the numbers, you got to focus on this. Mm-hmm. It's important to remember, I think, for us in Arizona, that we don't need to be Silicon Valley or be a $1 trillion company like a Google to grow rapidly in the software space or in cybersecurity. This is such a frontier. We can really succeed and win in this field because it's such a wild west right now. Also, we know from the history of the tech business that the durable advantage, and let me explain why I said I think the window is open for 5 years, plus or minus. In the tech business, it's all about talent. You build talent pools and clusters of talent around an industry in the tech business, and that talent pool is made of people, and once it evolves and puts down roots in a community, in a state, in a region, that's a durable advantage. This is why San Jose has been able to maintain its lead in tech and build for several decades despite massive global competition. It's because they have the world's top talent pool. We could build that in this area in Arizona if we move now. But the opposite's also true. I think if we don't, we will miss the train, and we won't be able to become that talent hub, that talent cluster. And so education investments are key. We got to have the talent. We got to ramp up fast. And that's going to involve the state universities and many other players.
So you guys got me really excited now because I see a lot of raw material here. And, my next question is to everybody. What is the biggest technological advantage that Arizona enjoys, and which key industries opportunity can Arizona pursue? And let me just parse that with, are there any feeder types of technologies and systems into these broader economic sector opportunities? Anybody can take that.
Don't everybody go at once. Tom, you have something to say?
To get us started here. So with regard to renewable energy, so thinking about that space, in terms of technical advantages, I'll say we do have a couple of resource advantages, and that we have a lot of land, and we have a lot of transmission capacity that'll be coming available over the next several years as our coal plants turn off. So that gives us an advantage right at the start. We also have some advantages with excellent industry base and technical expertise in the solar industry. Obviously, First Solar is here. University of Arizona and Arizona State have excellent solar programs. NAU is very heavily involved in wind energy. And so we really got the technical base to really give us an excellent opportunity to develop our resources and have a pretty good economic impact in that regard.
So let me just follow up with you, Tom. With the new administration, one of the things that they focus heavily on is the solar, wind, alternative energy. Does that excite you in terms of the potential here? And are you already sort of looking forward to some opportunities?
Absolutely, yeah. I'll tell you this much. Even with our previous administration that who's ending now, and with the incoming one, which is much more favorably disposed towards clean energy, the transition to these energy resources is coming no matter what, regardless of the policy environment, in a sense, because the cost of generation from wind and solar is now the cheapest you can get. So if you want to make the lowest cost investment in new generation, it's wind energy or it's solar energy. The thing that comes close is natural gas combined cycle. And so I think that's all coming. With the new administration coming in, I think there's going to be some opportunities, particularly throughout the universities, to participate in some of the advanced research that's coming up. Even though our solar and wind technology is maturing, there's still many, many improvements that can be made and will be made that are going to push down those costs even further. And I think Arizona is well positioned to be part of all that.
Stephen? You might be on mute. So Ben, what is this on-ramp for cyber for K through 12? And how does that play into this enormous growth opportunity?
Yeah, so cyber is a big field. So we use one word, but it's actually a very diverse field. There's a vocational track, which requires vocational prep. Of course, STEM training in K through 12 is essential for all those on-ramps. But some of them actually lead through community colleges. Some of them lead through industry certificates and don't require bachelor's or master's training to get on. So there's an operational information systems angle to cyber. There's a voracious need for that talent. And so we need to be developing a K through 12 pipeline there. But most of the field is in engineering, computer science, and also in cyber operations. So that requires your bachelor's and master's level training. That training could be considered a branch of computer science, applied computer science, electrical engineering. And so you're going to, for those cyber engineering and cybersecurity, cyber operations types of career paths, they do run through the traditional university and through the engineering and applied science departments at universities, which is why we're building out those programs right now.
Can you hear me now, Mike?
We can hear you, Stephen.
All right. Sorry, I had to leave and come back. So I think there's some incredible opportunity that the state has ahead of it in a whole range of technology areas. It's not one thing. First, electric vehicles. We now have a plant in Casa Grande that Lucid Motors built and is building vehicles, electric vehicles as we speak. Nikola is building a major plant in Coolidge. They have their headquarters and R&D operation in Phoenix. So, and we have a really good supply chain because of the automotive industry in Mexico. So I think electric vehicles are going to be a big deal. Autonomous vehicles, as you know, Waymo has a service that they're operating in the East Valley right now. Autonomously, you can be picked up by a Waymo vehicle and there's no driver at all. We have Too Simple down in Tucson, which has Class 8 trucks that have been driving between Phoenix and Tucson for about 3 years autonomously. Intel is building the microprocessing capability for that. So there's a really critical mass of expertise here on autonomous vehicles. I think IoT, the Internet of Things, is growing here significantly. Benchmark moved its entire operation here from Texas, and they're focused almost exclusively on IoT. A couple years ago, Avnet which is the state's largest technology company, did a pivot toward IoT. So that's a growing area. Wearables is another. There's a institute that's been built at Park Central Mall in Phoenix, where there's a bunch of startup companies in the wearables space. FinTech, financial technology. We created a FinTech sandbox a few years ago, and it's attracted a lot of companies here to Arizona. We're on the precipice of having more financial technology and financial companies in general here in Arizona than in New York, believe it or not. And then, of course, clean energy and cyber, mentioned by my two colleagues on the panel, are great opportunities for Arizona. So I think the future bodes well. We still have the traditional industries, aerospace and defense. Aerospace is suffering a little bit right now on the commercial side, but defense is up. As you probably know, we've attracted the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company to move an operation here and invest $12 billion. And we've already had a great semiconductor industry here since the late 40s when Galvin first brought Motorola here. So those industries continue to persist. And then finally, software. We have over 650 software companies in Arizona. A lot of people don't realize that. So anyway, I'm excited about the future of technology in Arizona.
So just one more question for you, Stephen. Let's just really pull down the curtain here. Earlier, you said that reputation is earned. So what more can you do to earn a better reputation? And what might be an inhibitor to that?
Well, I think, there is some value to promoting the state's level of technological expertise. I think, frankly, there's a lot of national ignorance about, what's going on here in Arizona. People have never looked to us as one of the tech hubs by the ones been listed earlier, Silicon Valley and Austin and Denver and Boston and Seattle and so on. So I think, organizations like the Arizona Commerce Authority, one of their mandates is to promote the state's assets, business assets, and particularly technology assets. So I think, investing some more in promoting what we've accomplished in the state. Unfortunately, a lot of it happens by reference and referral. And the more companies that are moving here from around the country and around the world, the more aware people are becoming. We've got Zoom that's moving in, and Infosys moved in not too long ago. There's just dozens and dozens of companies that have been moving here. And when they go through the process of evaluating, a site for whatever it is they're going to do, they find out why Arizona is such an attractive place. So I think some more promotion and marketing, and then all of us need to tell our friends and family.
So, Tom, one of the audience members submitted a question, and they were asking EnviroTech innovations related to water use, reuse, recycle. Does you or anyone on the panel have a comment about the direction of water treatment management as a key industry, focusing on environmental safety?
I don't think I'm the right person to answer that question. So I'm going to have to defer on that one. Can either of our other panelists perhaps answer that?
Mike, could you restate the question?
Sure. They said that they weren't hearing anything about EnviroTech innovations related to water use, reuse, recycle?
Well, a lot of the major tech companies here in Arizona have been putting stakes in the ground as to when they're going to become a fully circular operation, meaning that everything they put in is 100% recycled. Even companies like Intel, and that includes water. As you know, water is used significantly in the semiconductor processing business. So, states, nations, companies are looking at, having these circular environments that don't add any negative impact on the environment, including zero carbon at some point. Companies like PayPal and American Express, who have huge operations here, and as I mentioned, Intel and onsemi, all have strategies around saving water and recirculated it in their manufacturing environment. So that's what I can tell you.
Okay, Ben, one of the audience members is asking, how does the lack of affordable or reliable bandwidth outside of the valley impede Arizona's economic development? What must be done for everyone's benefit?
You're on mute, Ben. Happened to me too.
I like that question. So I think this issue boils down to one of Arizona's main competitive advantages, which is the quality of life, the weather, the landscape, and this is one of the premier places in the world to affordably live and have a high quality of life. We're also very close to California. So one of the growth areas that I think the state should be looking at is satellite office and telework for knowledge workers. And this is a trend that has been very important in the last 10 years. I predict that it is going to accelerate massively in the next 5 years due to the current crisis. I think that companies all over the country have realized that knowledge workers, especially senior independent types of knowledge workers, can live wherever they want. And I think that Arizona in general and rural Arizona in particular are poised to really take off in that area. This could be a huge growth engine for our state. And it could complement the strategy of bringing in headquarters and manufacturing. If you can take other companies' talent, like from San Jose, get them to relocate here, that's a way to bootstrap the rural economy. It's a great opportunity. They're calling it the Zoom Town. I got that from Joseph Guzman. Zoom Towns are a great opportunity. In order to build Zoom Towns, you got to have high quality internet. It's a non-starter if we don't have high quality internet. Living here in Flagstaff, we do okay at the university, but I wouldn't say our internet here lives up to the quality and reliability that I've experienced in other places in the country where I have lived. And I certainly wouldn't locate a tech business here right now if internet was a critical asset. I'm speaking frankly here. It's a challenge we have. This requires public investment. It's urgent. And we need to start building high quality internet access for Arizona's rural communities, starting with hubs like Flagstaff, but also reaching out into the tribes and Native American communities. They need it. This has got to be a priority for the state. And it's urgent. I want to underscore that. This isn't something that we can just do in bits and dabble in over the next 30 years, because that train will have left the station.
Mike, and I can add some
Sure.
comments there. So prior to the COVID curtain coming down on the last legislative session, there had been some substantial proposed investments by the governor in a broadband infrastructure in the state. But then the session ended and none of that happened. But the state did get substantial funding from the CARES Act, and the state is allocating a bunch of that, tens of millions of dollars to improving broadband. And it's not even just technology companies, it's education. Out of our 1 million students in the state, 100,000 of them either didn't have broadband or devices to be able to learn from home during this pandemic. And then think about how we've all transitioned to telehealth. Telehealth is dependent, again, on the internet. So I'm happy to say the state knows we have an issue, including our educational enterprises, and there is a lot of work going on right now to address the problem. Is it enough? I can't say, but Ben is absolutely right. If we want to continue to grow as a tech hub, we've got to have internet everywhere.
And I'd like to kind of add to that too. Two remarks. One is building off what Ben said. It's like we really need to help our rural communities prosper economically as the next decade unfolds. And having access to high quality internet services is crucial in that regard. If our rural areas don't have that, they will be left even further behind. With regard to energy production, the nature of the evolution of the grid right now is such that we're having more interactive loads on the grid. So it's not simply somebody turns on the lights, the utility provides that electricity immediately when it's needed, but rather the loads are able to interact with the grid to ensure its reliability and to balance the load and generation on the grid. And you're just going to see that increase in the future, especially as we see new technologies really make deep penetrations into our lifestyles, like electric vehicles, for example. Many changes are afoot with that. And as we think about that, there's opportunities for our lower income communities and counties in the state to participate in this blossoming, this economic development. And I think if we want to make sure that happens, we have to have a focus on that. And increasing access to the internet is one very important part of that.
So we got another person in the audience that's saying that they are app developing companies, 17 employees. They're the type of companies you want in your environment there. And they're saying that the infrastructure is poor at best. How can the prioritization for technology enable both public and private sector in northern Arizona?
I'm not sure exactly what's meant by infrastructure. There's several aspects. We just touched on internet access. That's an issue for sure. Another infrastructure is the talent pool, right? It's the research infrastructure. It's the training infrastructure. Your ability to be able to hire the people you need when and where you need them. We're working on that. So NAU, I think it's easy to miss how far NAU has come in the past 3 years in engineering and applied science. We never had a college of engineering. Most research universities, large research universities like NAU, have had that for decades, if not more than a century. We just established that 2 years ago at NAU. And so building internship programs, building out our training programs, and really making this a high priority for the region and for the university is something that's getting a lot more emphasis right now. So let's talk. We want to build the human infrastructure, and we are aggressively ramping it up right now.
So, Tom, earlier you said that we're only scraping the surface for the wind energy, and you gave a lot of great information to prove your thesis. The question is, how do you put a rocket to that? Like, what do you need to do to really make that take off? So you're not just scraping the surface.
Well, I think one rocket for that is recently I would say change in philosophy of Arizona Public Service. And before that, within the last few years of Tucson Electric Power and Salt River Project, where they've really digested the importance of having a carbon-free future. And so, for example, Arizona Public Service recently has their zero carbon by 2050 goal. And, 5 years ago, I would have said that was the exact opposite from their perspectives. And so in terms of producing power and developing those resources and infrastructure around it, when you're developing many of those resources, you'll see businesses flow to the state. You need that goal where it's desirable to have that clean energy. And that's partly a policy environment, and it's partly a business environment. It's, considering what APS has done recently, being their business environment and perspective. So I think we need that real demand for those clean energy resources to meet our carbon goals and our issues related to climate change, which are very real. And that's what it's going to take really to drive this, is that necessity to get the development, and I think some impetus to do that development in the state. Because certainly that's one way we can reach out to our rural areas of the state and have them participate in this. So I think there's some policy needed to promote that.
And the Arizona Corporation Commission is actually meeting tomorrow to talk about its standards going forward around both energy efficiency as well as clean energy. So you have to be involved, you have to get engaged, and there is some interesting discussion going on as to whether or not the legislature should be more engaged in clean energy than it has been, and there was a court case involved. So we'll see how that transpires over the next year or two.
I'd like to add to this that there is a global movement to clean energy. If you look at wind power, I think in the United States we have about 100 gigawatts of wind power, and there's over twice that in China right now, and there'll be even more in the future in China and other places across Asia. And with regard to electric vehicles, there's a big movement worldwide, China, Europe, two key places where they're going to be developing those technologies. And we either are going to be riding the wave on that, or we're going to be just kind of dragged along in the water that flows behind the wave. We really need to be part of that now to take advantage of the opportunities with regard to these new energy resources and applications. So, I would say, as Ben pointed out, that really is going to require some effort, some engagement on regards of, with our legislators, our corporation commission, and through ABOR and investments in the universities.
So it sounds like a culture needs to emerge with all of these technologies. It's not simply the technology or the industry, but there's a culture that needs to emerge between the political infrastructure, the community, the universities, and the businesses. Do you see that happening? Especially, Ben, I'd like to ask, with COVID coming along, we saw people teleworking. We saw people taking remote schooling. But we really didn't hear a lot about cybersecurity or security of those systems, right? And a part of that security is culture. Can you speak to that?
That's right. It is a culture of cybersecurity. It's not one that we have yet. We need to build it. I think this is. I imagine at some point in the past, after people started using money, that became important, and that spurred the development of the banks and the locks. Right. We are still at the cusp of the digital age. We are just entering it. This is the dawn. We are just starting to build the industries that really create value in the digital space. And I think that what you're starting to see is, as the digital tools become primary, and we're seeing that right now, digital tools will become primary for meetings and for doing business just this year. I think it was 2020. We've had them for 50 years, but they weren't really critical until right now. We wouldn't have been able to carry out our society this year without these tools. I think this is a turning point. And because it's a turning point, the cybersecurity, being able to rely on those systems now that they are all critical, it's the name of the game. It's becoming so important, and we have so much to learn. It is really still a Wild West. There's big arguments even at the foundations of this field about how we should be addressing cybersecurity. And there's just tremendous growth opportunities.
Mike, if there was any silver lining in COVID, it's been that digital transformation that we've now undergone. It's accelerated the digital transformation that we've been talking about for a decade. But this was a forcing situation where we, as Ben said, we wouldn't be operating as an economy if it hadn't been for the technology that we've now all embraced, the technology we're on here today. And as Ben says, it's just the beginning. The next 10 to 20 years are just going to be mind-boggling when it comes to how much impact that it has on our lives and on our economies.
So we're about to end this session. So if I could just get 1 minute from each of you and answer the question to students that are getting ready to graduate who are looking to entrepreneurial pursuits, what would you say are the greatest opportunities?
Well, I can speak to that. The Arizona Commerce Authority that I mentioned earlier has a program called the Innovation Challenge, the Arizona Innovation Challenge, and it actually provides substantive investment in the companies that are successful in the competition. And then they have another program called Venture Ready that helps you through your early stage process to get ready for angel and venture capital. And then they've got a couple of venture capital conferences. One is called Unmet, and the other one is called Invest Southwest Venture Madness. So we today have more resources for entrepreneurs in Arizona than we've ever had. We've got incubators everywhere. We've got co-working spaces, accelerators, and programs like those going on at the Arizona Commerce Authority. So there's lots of capabilities here in the state to support entrepreneurs. All of the universities have programs supporting entrepreneurs. So I think there's plenty of support for those early stage companies, whether they're run by students or adults.
Tom, is there a particular space that an entrepreneur might want to jump in, seeing what's coming down the road?
You bet. I think largely the clean energy businesses, and I say clean energy broadly here, there's many opportunities. Electricity generation and storage, big opportunities there. There's going to be much more storage in the future as prices have come down. Opportunities are opening up. Smart buildings and appliances, grid interactive buildings and appliances, in the transportation system. I think there's going to be a movement to electric vehicles, and it's going to happen because of cost, convenience, and just flat coolness of these EVs over the next several years. I think our energy system, broadly transportation, electricity, I think when you look at those in 30 years from now, it's going to look as different to us today as us looking back at the steam engine. I think it's going to be that big of a paradigm shift. And so I think there's all kinds of opportunity there for students coming out. And I think I'd be really excited if I were a student coming out these days knowing what's going to happen.
Ben?
Two thoughts. So first, connect with universities. We have an ecosystem in the 3 state research universities that is super helpful. We've got all kinds of expertise and talent. We have internship programs, capstone programs. You never know when you might find a diamond in a rough when you're engaged in those relationships, because it's just this rich intellectual and innovation ecosystem. Many of our nation's innovations, according to some studies, the vast majority of our economic growth over the last 50 to 100 years has come out of university relationships. So it's a good bet, and it costs very little to be engaged. Come talk to me and others at the other universities. Second, think local. You don't have to be Google. You don't have to beat Google. In a state like Arizona with a rapidly growing population and economy, in the middle of a digital transition, if you want to solve real companies' problems, real cities' problems, real citizens' problems, there's just so many niches to do that in. Solve a problem locally. You can make money doing it. This is a booming and opportunity-rich environment at the local level, at the small scale. It's a great place for entrepreneurship.
So as we come to the conclusion of this panel, I want to thank the university. I want to thank Stephen and Tom and Ben for having me. And I will conclude with just echoing what Ben said. If you want to make money, solve a problem. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you.
Thank you.